Buying versus renting a home. Which one's the better financial decision?
I'm so confused.
These are confusing times.
Of course, this would mean comparing the numbers to buy versus rent, but I'd like to take a completely different angle here and focus on what most people don't talk about: the psychology and the complications between buying a home and renting one. Because at the end of the day, why are we buying a house or even renting one? It's so that we're mentally satisfied and happy, right? And so unless we understand the thoughts and the rationale behind buying versus renting, the numbers don't mean anything. By the way, this controversial question about real estate dates back centuries. You heard that right, centuries. Like when Shakespeare said to be or not to be, he actually meant to buy or not to buy a home. You know, where B stands for the buy. Get it? You see, this is what real estate does to you. It fucking messes with your head.
He's out of line, but he's right.
Anyway, now that we got that out of the way, let's first talk about the pride behind owning a home. Owning anything and calling it yours is a great feeling, and nothing beats the feeling than when you can call a house your own and you have true autonomy over it.
It's mine. It's all mine.
You're the master or the mistress of your domain. It's weird when you say mistress of something, right? Such a weird negative connotation. Anyway, you get the point. With most other investment instruments like stocks and bonds, you can't really see, touch, or physically use any of them. But on the flip side, there is utility to owning a home. You can get a roof over your head, and you can also borrow money or take on debt by using it as a collateral once it's all yours, obviously. And this is a huge reason why people buy a place instead of renting one, and why society pushes us to buy a home. You can flaunt your home and show it off as much as you want, and society will accept you and tag you as successful. But society can't see how much money you have invested in the stock market and how much it's grown. It's like they say, seeing is believing, and feeling or touching something that actually exists is all the more convincing. Touching? Sounds weird when I say that. Anyway, since we're talking about showing off our homes and societal acceptance and whatnot, let's next talk about how usually no one settles for the basic home. Since this is going to be your home and you'll probably show it off, you'll do whatever it takes for the home to be exactly what you have in mind, if not better. Because of this emotional attachment, chances are you'll increase the budget for your home when you realize how much your dream home actually costs, and so end up spending more to get the place. And once you buy the place though, you'll end up splurging even more, decking up the home and setting it up the way you have it pictured in your head.
I am going to totally pimp this place out. I'm going to put a surround sound system. I'm going to put a plasma screen right against this wall.
Terrible
I'm putting
idea.
my bed right over here.
No.
This whole thing could be a slippery financial slope. I'm sure you've seen this firsthand with your friends or family members, right? Am I saying that you shouldn't do this? Hell no. This is your place and you should be proud of owning it and setting it up the way you've always imagined it. But what I'm also saying is that this is something you should take into account and literally jot down the overheads and expenses that go with buying a house. This gets most home buyers by surprise because they pop up towards the tail end of the negotiations or right after buying the house. And by then you're so far down the rabbit hole that you just go with it, resulting in these expenses really stacking up. Although these factors can kind of also be true for the place you plan to rent, emotionally and psychologically though, since this isn't your own place, you can very easily cut down on some expenses, especially without a massive mortgage looming over your head. You don't want to make an emotional decision for one of the biggest purchases of your life.
I made the right decision. I'm a homeowner. It's good to be a homeowner. Diversifying, this is good.
Talking about purchases and expenses, incorrect comparison between rent and the total cost of ownership. You see how I didn't say mortgage, but instead I said total cost of ownership? This is crucial because people tend to make this mistake a whole lot. I mean, I have personally done this too in the past. I was on this real estate listing website and it showed me the monthly mortgage amount to own this beautiful 4-bedroom home with an awesome backyard that has some 3 dogs running around in circles. And what stood out, apart from the awesome doggies of course, was that the monthly mortgage amount was exactly the amount I pay for rent right now. And so I sat there thinking, why the hell am I paying the same amount for rent to live in my condo when I can get this awesome, spacious, independent house, including the dogs, of course. That's a non-negotiable.
Dogs are my whole life. Also work. Doing work and hanging with dogs. That's my lifestyle.
But what younger dog-infatuated me failed to understand was that there were so many additional costs that were just not shown to me on that website, like maintenance, property taxes, closing costs, damages and repairs, insurance, etc. And this is not by mistake either. This is exactly how they plant the seed in your head and get you to think, if it's going to cost me pretty much what I'm paying for rent right now, then I might as well buy a house and build equity in it, right? And so the biggest takeaway here, the maximum you'll have to pay every every month is your rent, but with owning a home, the bare minimum you have to cover is the mortgage or loan. So if you're the renter, then this helps plan your monthly expenses because you just have this one single payment, which is rent, you have to make every single month. This also makes your future and living expenses more predictable, further helping you make better financial decisions in the long run. But that's not the case with owning a home though, because there are of course unforeseen expenses that pop up. For instance, if something gets damaged, then it's going to cost you valuable time and money. Like say your washing machine or the water heater breaks down, it's your responsibility to fix it, which also means you end up paying more in certain months. There's this YouTuber I follow, Rose Han, I think that's her name, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it right, who was talking about how she owns a rental property in Vegas and this car crashed into the house, damaging it considerably. And she also said how this whole owning a property and renting it out was such a huge pain or challenge for her. Again, something she didn't account for and something obviously no one can account for, but it's worth keeping in mind that with great ownership comes a lot of responsibility. But with renting a property, any overheads or damages will be the owner's headache. Our microwave stopped working a while ago and all we had to do is inform our landlady and then it was up to her to fix it. Since we're talking about expenses here, let's also look at the other side of the equation, savings, and how home ownership acts as a forced savings instrument. What does that even mean? Well, simply put, when you own a home, you have no choice but to make the monthly mortgage payment for your house. And if you don't end up paying, then you potentially stand to lose your home. And since your physical home is at stake here, you will do whatever it takes to ensure that you don't default on these payments, which means that you now have a monthly system of making payments for your home. And since a portion of a monthly mortgage goes towards building equity in your house, you are technically saving this amount. And so this system becomes a forced savings method for you to save every single month. I've said it time and again on so many of my previous videos, you need to have a system or habit of saving money, otherwise you're always going to play catch up or the victim.
I'm the victim. Me.
But this is not the case for renters though, like me, where you need to come up with your own methods of saving and investing money, which to be honest, doesn't naturally come to most people. The whole intent of me creating this channel was to help people with this challenge of building personal finance systems that would help you make money even in the darkest of times. And so buying a house technically helps people who normally have a tough time saving or investing their money. Because in this case, we're talking about just making this one mortgage payment every single month instead of worrying about where to put your savings, which stock to invest in, which bond do I buy, or which crypto do I gamble my money with. While saving in the form of your home equity might seem like the easier and smarter solution for most people, it's not the advisable system to follow because it could hurt you in the long run and make you cash poor. A lot of house owners end up becoming house rich but cash poor, meaning that they don't have any money left after paying their monthly payments towards owning a home.
Forget about retiring when you're 65.
And this could put you in a risky situation where if a big expense pops up, then you would be seriously strapped for cash.
In terms of money, we have no money.
This goes back to the same thing I mentioned in my previous video around having cash liquidity. You need to have cash at your disposal, otherwise you'll have to liquidate your investments. And the whole point of any investment is to stay invested for the long run so that compound interest really kicks in and makes you some serious money.
The magic of compounded interest.
And so not having any breathing room or additional savings after you pay off your mortgage is seriously not recommended. This could also mean that you don't have any additional money to invest in other instruments or asset classes. And you might be thinking, why do I need to invest elsewhere when I'm constantly building equity in this house that costs hundreds of thousands of dollars? Well, this thinking goes against the fundamental rule of investing, which is you need to diversify your investments.
Diversified investment.
Putting all your eggs and money in one basket is not a good strategy at all. Imagine if something were to happen to your house and you have all your life savings invested in that one house. It could potentially ruin you. Again, I'm not saying that no one should buy a house. The point is you don't want all your money and equity tied to one investment. That in no way is diversified at all.
Diversify.
And let's forget about savings and investments for a sec and think about just living our lives to the fullest. If you don't have money left over to use for other activities or areas that could bring you happiness, then really what's the point of doing all of this? What about the beautiful restaurant you always wanted to go to, traveling to that exotic place and experiencing things in your bucket list? Basically not living a rich life. This is something my wife and I spoke about in our previous video. I'll leave a link to this at the end of this video. Stick around. The point being, you don't want to curtail living your life to the fullest just because you have nothing left over after your monthly payments to own your home. So don't become cash poor in the process. Let's next talk about something that's so important to homeowners: stability, privacy, and flexibility with owning a home. The stability that comes with owning a home and not being kicked out by a landlord or landlady. The privacy where you don't have to share the space with anyone and worry about your landlord just walking in when they feel like. The flexibility with doing whatever you want in your home. Like no rules or restrictions, you're the boss of your domain and you can remodel and customize the home the way you like without anyone questioning you. These are all huge valid benefits that come with owning a place, and of course these are downsides with renters. But it's important to consider a different angle too. When it comes to renting, you're not restricted to living in a location based on the market price of the house. Sure, the rent varies depending on the location, but you're not taking on a massive responsibility and debt to live in a particular location. Not to mention, you can choose to move places and locations with no dire repercussions at all. If you're younger or prefer to travel and explore different places, then renting might just be the obvious option. For instance, we live in downtown Toronto right now and we're loving it here, and we don't see ourselves moving into the suburbs anytime soon. But if we had to experience downtown at this age or moment in time, there'd be no way we can buy a place here, because units on an average here are around $1 billion, and these units are pretty small. And so that flexibility and choice of living here, I wouldn't get with buying a house. So you would need to unemotionally weigh this part out and make a decision that caters to your needs and expectations. And that brings me to the last but the most important psychological aspect. Which one's the better investment? At the end of the day, you're trying to maximize your money and investments and make more money in the process. And a better investment means happiness and you feeling better about this decision. And so it's important to really crunch the numbers and weigh them out. Numbers really don't lie, provided you're accounted for all aspects, and then it becomes a no-brainer decision for you. There are a number of things to consider here, one being opportunity cost of your money. For example, your down payment for the house, let's say you plan to buy a house for about $800,000, then you would need to cough up a down payment of around $160K, which is like 20% of the total amount. Now the opportunity cost here is whether it's a better idea to pay this $160K or invest in another instrument like a stock, mutual fund or ETF, or even crypto.
So I'm so excited about all this new. Just a sec.
Okay, just kidding. Do not put in this kind of money into crypto. Okay, so if the down payment for a house yields you more money in the long run, then yes, buying a house could be the better choice. But this requires some serious crunching and calculations and even nuances to get to that point. Another thing to consider here are unrecoverable costs. Basically money that you won't get back. For instance, with renting, it's your monthly rent. You don't gain any ownership or asset from paying your monthly rent. And you might be thinking that with owning a home, you're obviously building equity in your home, and so you're gaining a whole lot. Sure, but this can be misleading too. This example might blow your mind. This is the payment schedule for the home loan to buy a house worth $500K. The loan term is 30 years. And the rate of interest I've considered is 6%, which is below the average variable rate as of shooting this video. You can see that we end up paying about 54% in interest, while only 46% goes towards principal or building equity. So over the course of a loan, you end up paying close to $1,080,000 for a house that costs only $500K, which is your equity by the way, and about $580K goes in interest. This interest is unrecoverable too, just like the renters pay, but this part is completely ignored. And let's not even get into the other overheads that come with owning a home. Since this whole numbers piece is an important topic, and because we're primarily focusing on the psychological aspects in this video, I think it's super important to really get into the numbers and talk about this in detail. And so I'll have a part 2 to this video where I really go into the numbers, talk about the 5% rule, the 8% rule too, so that you can decide which will make you more money in the process, renting or buying. Spoiler alert, in most cases, renting will yield you a better profit. So if you'd like to check it out, then hit the subscribe button down below and switch on notifications so that you're notified when the video drops. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.